Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bright Founders Talk at Temi. Temi is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. Welcome to our podcast, where we bring you the most inspiring stories of entrepreneurs and experts in the software development industry. Each week, we interview successful leaders who share their unique journeys and valuable insights. I'm your host, Barry. Today, we're lucky enough to have a remarkable guest joining us, Jyotiska Biswas, CEO and founder of ThinkTrends. Jyotiska, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Barry. Nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. How are you doing today? How's your day been?
It's been good. I'm located in DC. It was snowed this weekend. So, yeah, it's been good. It's cold.
Looking to do any skiing or snowboarding, or are you involved indoors?
Skiing in the slopes of artificial intelligence. That's what we're doing.
And where better to ski? So firstly, I know you're really busy, so thank you so much for taking time out of your day to speak with us. So let's start by getting to know a little bit better about you. So would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and the company that you work for?
Yeah, so my background is in computer science. That's something I've been passionate about ever since I was a kid. And then my practice is in data science. And then from data science, I went on to, as a cloud engineer, was a tech lead at various different agencies. And the inspiration behind ThinkTrends was that what I saw in the market and having a tech lead, and this was a personal frustration of mine, was that we would see a lot of different disparate tools for having a good AI solution. There would be a tool that would do data visualization, that would be doing data labeling. So a lot of different tools that were out there, and having to connect them in a cohesive way to have one very solid, robust AI solution was quite challenging. And not only was it challenging, oftentimes we would see a lot of the projects I was leading, it was very tedious. It was manual, having to connect different tools together. And that's where we saw that there wasn't any really good tools in the market that combined a lot of different components that were needed to make a good AI solution. So because of that problem, what we did is that's what inspired me to create ThinkTrends. And what we did was we consolidated all of these tools into one-stop shop platform for all your enterprise AI needs. And the kicker is that it's 100% codeless. So when we want to democratize AI, we believe that for it to happen, it needs to be done not just by data scientists and software engineers, but normal human beings need to be able to use a tool and to be able to use and create artificial intelligence. And so this is the problem we're solving. And in long sense, the problem was that this is a personal challenge I faced in the industry, and I wasn't finding a good solution. So I went ahead and started creating it. And that's where we are now.
Perfect. And you mentioned challenging, and that will be relevant later because I have some good questions about that.
Okay.
But before that, what was your life like prior to starting ThinkTrends?
Yeah. So prior to ThinkTrends, I worked as a data scientist, and then I became senior data scientist, and then I became a tech lead, and then I was a tech lead, and then I was the director of technology in my past company, and so kind of explored of various different kinds of software engineering, having to build up teams using different products and platforms. And so that was my background. All in through I've always been very technical, and then sort of went up to the leadership position, and that what's ultimately inspired me to create ThinkTrends.
Were you always interested in data and artificial intelligence, or was it something that you kind of stumbled across through your life journey?
So I have a good story behind this. So my interest in data science began in 2012. So around that 2011-12 was that area where machine learning went from academia into sort of industry. That's where we would see that transition. And at that time, a Stanford professor by the name of Andrew Ng, he's actually a pioneer. He's a legendary data scientist. He created this open course through Stanford Learning called Introduction to Machine Learning. And this came out in 2012. And it was beautiful because it was completely free. So anybody really with that interest could sign up. And I remember I took that course in 2012 and I had goosebumps. And I knew that whatever I did in life, it would need to be something in machine learning. And it was beautiful. It was really combining principles in statistics, linear algebra, and computer science. And by combining these three disciplines, that's what we were calling machine learning. And what it was able to do and some of the proof of concepts and things that was shown, I was completely mind blown. And I was like, this is the future. And so ever since, I kind of knew that my path was in data science. And beyond that, I found the beautiful thing about computer science is a lot of this information is publicly available, right? If you have the will and the interest, it's on YouTube, it's on Wikipedia. You can search the internet and you can find a lot of very interesting information. And so I just went on this sort of this self-journey after that on data science, and I tried to kind of absorb as much information as I can on machine learning, probabilistic graphical models, even quantum computing. So these were kind of the emerging technologies at that time in 2012, and that was kind of my inspiration. So that in essence, kind of tying back to your question, was my inspiration. I always knew that it had to something be related to machine learning.
Machine learning and artificial intelligence has become very prominent at the moment. I mean, there's hardly a day where a news story about artificial intelligence or deepfake or any of these like computer models in the world today. Do you see this becoming exponentially more complex, become exponentially more useful, or do you think there might be a period where the gains start to slow down a little bit?
I don't think so. I actually think if you have been looking at the trajectory of machine learning from the last 10 years, it's only been going up. And with the advent of generative AI in the last year, it's been a crucial turning point for artificial intelligence. For data scientists and software engineers, machine learning was not, that 2023 was not the turning point. But 2023 was the turning point for the layman, for an average user. Now, kids in middle school and grandparents can use something called ChatGPT, where all it takes is a simple question and it's able to generate an answer, right? So now it's come to the point where everyone, layman people who are not in the technical field, are familiar or using artificial intelligence. Before, it was sort of in the backdrop, right? Like if you're shopping on Amazon, AI was able to recommend this is what you can shop for next, right? Based on your purchase history, right? If you're using your phone, it would try to clear and focus on the faces. AI was all over in every aspect of our lives. AI was there, but now it's come to the point where it's so it's so obvious and out in the open that layman users who are non-technical have a way to be able to access it. And 2023 is, like I said, the trend has only gone upward, and I think 2024 we are going to see a lot more, not just in large language models, but in large vision models, LVMs. We're going to see more multimodal AI. Multimodal AI means that being able to combine various different machine learning models in one cohesive way, so that way it's multimodal. And we're going to see more capabilities there. And then we're going to see more capabilities around generative AI, where it's going to give us the tool or the ability to kind of use it in a way. Let's say you want to help you create an assistant that can help you analyze your stock portfolio, right? This is where there's going to be more agents and ways to be able to tap into generative AI, and we're going to see more tools and more kind of capabilities that are going to be out there. And it's not just the power of the algorithm; it's our ability to have access to that algorithm, which is also going to grow. And that's kind of what we're doing at ThinkTrends. So I believe that it's only going to get more exponentially more powerful. The reach of it is going to get broad as well. So one of the things is that with the advent of generative AI, it can be used for nefarious purposes, unfortunately. And this is where I think in 2024, lawmakers will need to have to really sit down and understand the technology, and not just kind of from a high level, but actually have a deep understanding, and we will see more regulations that will be coming out in 2024, at least kind of in the phases of early planning. We will see that, because I think to kind of oversee these AI technology, which, by the way, I love, this is something I'm very passionate about, but I also believe in having some kind of regulation, especially in a country like United States. It's where we foster innovation but it's also important for a democracy to have somewhat control over these technologies, because the things that I was mentioning, which is that for nefarious ways that it can be used, for example, is for election interference, spreading propaganda at scale, misleading information. And now we can do that better than ever. Before, we relied on manual bots or some kind of a farm somewhere to be where people are manually kind of typing in misinformation. Now generative AI could do that. Because so what we see is that technology is capable of doing a lot of things. It's just now time for lawmakers to kind of understand that and make sure that we are able to properly oversee this kind of technology. Another trend what we will see, this is kind of what I will end on because it's the most exciting thing, is the growth of open source large language models. So what we have seen with generative AI, ChatGPT, Bard, they are what we call closed generative AI. And it's a public, everyone can connect to it and ask questions. But now with the advent of open source large language models, and we see a lot of industry kind of funding and traction towards that. NVIDIA, Meta, they're investing billions of dollars towards open source large language models. And what we're going to see is agencies for enterprise, they're going to be able to leverage open source large language models effectively to make out their own generative AI systems that are that's more protective of their proprietary and sensitive information. And so I think this is where we're going to see lots of different avenues. It's a very exciting time, I think, 2024. We're going to see lots of advancements of AI. We're going to see more democratization of these AI tools where people will be able to access it, lawmakers catching up to it, and we're going to see some open source technologies.
It's interesting that you say that because usually, we're also keen to concentrate on the advantages and the pros of a particular field, but it's also really important to be aware of the negatives and the possible impacts that they can have in society. So it's really insightful that you mentioned that there. Talking about impacts, what's been the most unexpected challenge for you on your journey?
That's a good question. One of the most unexpected, it's more of a self-learning process. I am deeply, deeply passionate about technology. I always, when I created ThinkTrends, I wanted to make the best AI automation platform you can imagine. And I had my vision for it. I knew all the problems. And in some way, it's not unexpected, but it was a learning lesson for me where I needed to make sure that it's not always about the tooling, but it's about a solution. Because an end user really cares about how is this going to make my day better? How is this going to help me do my job better? How is it going to reduce the cost? And it needs to be very obvious. And while my tooling is great, it's important that we focus on the solution. And so this is something that when along the journey of my entrepreneurial journey, this is something that for the last couple of years, we've been in business a little bit over 5 years, a little bit after 2 to 3 year mark. That's when this is something that it occurred to me, and we started offering professional services around our tools to be able to make sure that the end user is 100% satisfied. It really makes sense, and also providing them the training, because while we are providing codeless AI tools, you do need some training. Even something like Excel, you need to have some training to be able to use it. So this is something that we are focusing heavily on as well. And in some ways, I guess, for any entrepreneur who will say that this is, at some point, this is part of the journey. And I think that was something that was to expect. I thought I would just make a great tool and it would immediately connect. And that wasn't the case. And so that's something very early on, I realized that, and I had to kind of make sure the mindset for when we kind of explained and brought these products to our customers, this was a mindset that was in everyone's. We made it very clear. So it was always solution-centric.
Perfect. So when you get these challenges, how do you actually stay motivated and inspired? When times are good and it's plain sailing, I suppose it's easy to maintain your motivation. But when things aren't going quite the way that you expected, how do you cope with that?
That's a good question also. In one way, the one word that comes to me is consistency. Because not every day is going to be a high and not every day is going to be a low. You take the wins as they come and you celebrate them. And for every loss, you reflect on that and you try to see where you can improve, what you could have done better. Always have a self-critical mindset, not from a place of, just kind of like where you get demoralized, but always as having a vision of improvement. How can I always get better? So these are factors that I'm always considering, but really it's about having the consistency to do this day in, day out, and just having the grit and kind of pushing through every day. And then coming to realize that, as we continue to grow, there's a lot of other factors and responsibilities that that I have towards my team, and I have to honor that, and I have to think about them as well. So these things are always there, so that are always in my mind. So at the end of the day, this is how I deal with any challenge, or it's just the persistency and making sure day in, day out, just be consistent in what I do.
It's really great that you mentioned the team, because you're really good at helping me segue into the next question. So thank you for making my life easy.
Right.
So in terms of the team, how do you manage to create like a community of like-minded people? And what potential qualities are you looking for in your team members?
Yeah, the number one thing is probably communication. I believe in good communication, and that just doesn't mean talking, right? It's about understanding, having an understanding what this person is trying to say, or if you feel like that this person isn't communicating the right way, what are some tools that you can, as myself in sort of a leadership position, how can I give them these tools to be able to properly communicate? And always having a communication channel. This is something I personally, I'm very reachable to my team. And if I cannot answer them, I tell them I will get back to you. So having a good communication medium is very important. And number two is passion. For a startup, I would say passion is a currency. Without passion, it really doesn't work. It's, for a company with a small team, how are you going to beat the big players? It's if you just work, like you kind of just coast, or you just think that, okay, I'll just do this and I'm not going to think about it. After 5 o'clock, I'm going to shut my brain off. Then it doesn't really work. This is where in the startup world, and it's not that I expect everyone working late hours, but the way at least I hire people who are passionate about artificial intelligence, who are passionate about engineering, who are passionate about building something. And these are things that are very important, who are very passionate about their work. And so passion and communication. I think if you have those two things, everything else can be taught and learned. And of course, there's of course some level of skills and background that you will need to have to be able to code, and so that's of course we have a rigorous process in which where we interview people and candidates and we hire them accordingly. But besides the technical qualifications, it's the person's ability to communicate and having a passion for artificial intelligence and engineering.
And you mentioned closing your computer and turning it off at 5 o'clock. Is that something that you can do, or do you find it difficult to maintain that work-life balance?
I don't think I have ever stopped working at 5 unless there was an emergency. I know it's a little different. Being an entrepreneur, this is my company. I'm deeply passionate about. I would pay you to do artificial. If I could pay to do machine learning, I would, right? Like that's how passionate I am about what I'm doing. But of course, it's come to this point where I value work-life balance for my employees, because if they are well rested, if they're rejuvenated, then they can work better. I do believe that rest is very much important. I believe sleep is very important, and having hobbies, having extracurriculars are all very important. It's about kind of being a balanced person in many ways, and being a balanced person actually makes you really good. I believe will make you really good at your job. So, but of course, I think for me it's a little different. I don't ever really shut up. I'm always thinking about something about the company. That's always in my mind.
I suppose when it's something that you love, you kind of like, it's like a hobby, isn't it? It's like a passion, and therefore you don't need to rest from it. Is that right?
It very much is. I mean, people used to ask me, what's your hobby? And I used to say coding. I mean, so that's definitely one of my hobbies, and in that way, I am blessed. I am very lucky that I could take something that I'm so passionate about, something that is a hobby, into a career. Of course, now with having running the business part, it's very stressful. So it's not all fun and games, of course, but it's quite stressful. But for what it's worth, it's become it is something I'm very happy and I feel blessed to be doing.
Lovely, thank you for that. And do you like work best at all times of the day? Do you have like a morning session? You work particularly best in the morning?
Yeah.
Or are you more of an evening person where you like to clear your emails and work in the evening? Do you have any preferences for when to
Oh,
work?
I think a morning person for all the hard stuff, all the engineering. I always do that. I say I that those are always in the morning for me. And then more on the marketing, like kind of sales stuff, I have like two meetings. I have an afternoon meeting, which I do with my sales and marketing team, and my engineering. To me, that's the hard stuff. Like that's the more like the create where I have to be more creative and solve technical problems and things like that. That is for me in the morning. So yeah, I'm able to kind of divide up my time through morning and afternoon. Yeah. So I would say morning. That's where I would say I'm more of a morning person where I focus on the hard stuff.
Perfect, lovely. And unfortunately, we are coming towards the end of the interview, but we do have a question that I always ask everyone who comes on, and
Yeah.
that is, what advice would you give to any aspiring entrepreneurs, people who may feel like, oh, is now the right time? What
Right.
kind of questions should they be asking themselves, and what advice can you give?
It's a good question. Of course, I will give them practical advice. And the most practical advice, of course, you need to have passion and grit. And every entrepreneur, you must truly believe that. I believe as an entrepreneur to in yourself to think that you have passion. That's why there will even consider starting an entrepreneurial journey, right? So of course, passion, grit, very important. But from a practical standpoint, I would say having a good MVP and understanding that what's your timeline, right? Like, I, I know there are entrepreneurs who just are maybe on a pitch, are able to maybe get funding or whatnot and do that. I think that's pretty rare, and I don't think in the current landscape, unless you are a 3 times founder, it's very hard to get that kind of funding. Practical advice is to have a 6-month MVP where you actually are able to design and prove the viability of your idea. And I think that's really important. And to have a realistic timeline and have a vision that, okay, 6 months from now, this is what I will be able to create. 1 year from now, I probably should be able to get a pilot customer. So having a very clear path towards getting your first customer and having your first a solid MVP that you can actually use and even have some beta users who can. So going from the MVP to beta, maybe that's something in the 9-month period. So having like 1 or 2 good users, having a pilot user, and it's important to think about that because I think a company in an entrepreneurial journey, you need to be revenue focused. You need to be able to not just build something, but then be able to go and sell that and actually bring value to the customer. And those are all part of the equation and they're all equally important. It's not just about the technology. And so having a very well thought out timeline so that within a year you could go and try to get your first customer. I think that is my advice. If I could give one, that would be my most important advice.
And what amazing advice it is too. Thank you for that gold. You can't get better out there. Jyotiska, I just want to thank you again for talking with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you.
Thank you, Barry. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
That was Jyotiska Biswas, CEO and founder of ThinkTrends.